I had stage fright for most of my life, and now I speak on stages across the world and get paid for it. I'm going to teach you how to overcome your stage fright for good. This will also help you with your YouTube recording if you're wanting to start your own YouTube channel. So I had stage fright until I was 36. I'm in my mid 40s now. And I even hid behind a tree once when I was supposed to host a pride festival in Colorado. I don't know if you know this or not, but trees have two sides to them. So I don't know who I thought I was hiding from. After I went from being homeless to starting my own venture fund, I got a lot of press. And when I got a lot of press, I got a lot of inbound requests to speak. But the problem was, I had this crazy stage fright that I just couldn't get over ever since I was a kid. Now, I could talk to people all day in private settings, one on one and at a small table. But if it were like 30 people or more, I didn't know how to even start that conversation. I got so nervous, my heart would pound, I would sweat, I would stutter. Does this sound familiar to you at all? Like it feels like you're a deer in the headlights and that you can hear your heartbeat and that everything got really, really close to you and it's pounding. It's myopic and like, what am I going to do? If you've ever felt that way when you were told to speak or if you had to speak impromptu, I have some ways to help you because I've been where you are. I turned down some lucrative and important speaking engagements because I was letting fear take over. And I'm so glad that I've jumped to the other side of this because so much has happened since. Today, just a few years later, I've spoken publicly hundreds of times across the world. I've been paid as much as $50,000 to speak for 45 minutes, and I have met so many amazing people on this journey that I would not have met if I weren't speaking at that event or if I weren't putting myself out there. I also got 2 book deals. I've closed negotiations because of speaking, and so much else has happened. Public speaking has become a powerful tool for my career. And I would say that 90% of my success is due to the fact that I am a public speaker. It has helped me amplify my message and it has helped me get my business out to the world. And that's what it can do for you. Now, remember, I absolutely hated and dreaded public speaking, and there was nothing anybody could say to me to change that. People, friends, strangers, they tried to help me. They tried to give me advice. They tried to even scare me into doing it and guilt me into doing it. But none of that works. You probably know that. If you've ever had a friend try in earnest to say, hey, you can just do this or you can just take that, it doesn't really work. So this is like a safe space where you just get to listen to me. And if anything I say helps and resonates, awesome, right? But there's no pressure. So first I'll just tell you my story so you'll understand how I went from trembling behind a tree at Colorado Spring Pride to this point where like I'm speaking everywhere. So back in 2017, I was about a year and a half into having my venture fund, Backstage Capital. So people knew me and I had this press that was going on. I'd been invited to a lot of places to speak and I just said no. And I even have this video where I say, hey, I'm not going to be able to speak because I have stage fright and put my foot in the sand, draw the line in the sand, and I'm not going to speak. And I thought I was like so brave to say that. Then 2 things happened. One is I was supposed to get this award, and you had to give a 5-minute speech if you get the award at this banquet. And you knew that ahead of time. And I begged them, I said, can my friend do it? Can someone do it on my behalf? And they said, absolutely not. It has to be you. So I bowed out and I said, actually, I can't take their award because I can't give the speech. And so I went to this banquet with my mom, and we had this beautiful table right at the front, and we watched someone else get my award and give a wonderful, beautiful speech. And that just started to grate at me. And then the second thing that happened was I was booked to speak on the same stage on the same day as Richard Branson, who had been my business hero for Forbes. I said yes to it originally because I was really, really wanting to meet Richard Branson. But then the weekend before I was supposed to show up, I canceled. And I watched Richard Branson from the rafters in a seat with everyone else and didn't get to meet him, didn't get to hang out backstage, didn't get to potentially let him know what I was doing with my transformative business that would have been impressive to him. And those 2 things got to me. And I finally said in January of 2017, after reading Shonda Rhimes' Year of Yes book, I said, you know what? This year in 2017, I'm going to say yes to 3 speaking engagements. If nothing else, people will finally leave me alone because I'll say, hey, I tried 3 different times. Look what happened. It sucked. I never have to do it again. Will you leave me alone? And just maybe it will actually work out. So I had my first event in March of 2017, and I had it with a friend of mine. And that's a good tip for you is like if you can do it under friendly circumstances where the stakes aren't so high, that's a good way to start. And my friend interviewed me, but even though the room only had about 60 or 70 people in it, I was terrified. I got there and the whole thing happened. The deer in the headlights, the pounding heart, the sweats, the clammy hands. I did not know what to do with myself. I actually said out loud to someone, who booked this? And they said, you did. And I'm like, when? When did I book this? Because I couldn't believe I put myself in this position. I was terrified. So I sat on the chair. I had the mic in my hand. There wasn't a stage, it was that small of a room. And right before we went on, my friend said, this is being streamed, meaning people were going to be watching it from different parts of the world to see me too. So I was just a mess. And I thought for a moment, I'm going to cancel. I'm on stage already, or I'm in this seat already. There's a spotlight on me. I remember the feeling of that spotlight, but I said, I'm going to cancel. Right. And if you have stage fright, you understand this. You're like, yeah, you cancel. But I'll tell you what happened next. And this is where I think things would change for you too. I opened my eyes, and in the seconds while everyone was shifting and kind of settling in, I looked out and I just saw several faces looking back at me that were mostly women. They were mostly women of color, and they were all smiling. And some of them were like physically leaning forward. Some of them had notebooks, like I always talk about having your notebook when you watch my videos. They were all there to learn and to gain some value. And in that split second, I said to myself, oh, it's not about me, it's about them. It's not about me being scared of sounding foolish or not getting something right or falling out, fainting. It's about the audience who's there to get value, the people who took a train to get in, the people who got babysitters, the people who they need to take away some nugget of information that'll help them in their career or in their business, or they may not be able to pay the rent. They have high stakes. You talk about stakes, those are high. And as soon as I felt that, I had this immediate calm fall over me, and my shoulders dropped, and I smiled, and I was still nervous because it was still happening. But I had a calm and a peace that I will always remember. And immediately, the first question went to me. And I said, it's on film. And I said, oh, we're going to me first, huh? Kind of got a little awkward and settled. And then I went and I answered the question, and you couldn't shut me up. I just kept talking and answering and bantering and joking and doing all the things. And it felt so good. And I just couldn't quite understand why that was happening when I had convinced myself, this is terrible. This is a bad thing. I don't want to do this. It was fun. I couldn't believe it. So I did that one. And then I was like, I had a little bit of, a little like, hey, I can do this now. So I said, I'm so busy. I really am busy, but I can do these now. I'm going to start charging because I was doing this for free. I'm going to start charging. And actually, let me back up. The first one with my friend, Ania, was paid. She paid me for my very first official speaking gig because she is a real one. Let me set that record straight. But I hadn't been actively charging. So I said, I'm so busy. I don't think I can do all these that have been asked of me. So I say I'm going to charge $5,000. And I'm thinking this number is so crazy. No one's going to ever say yes to this. So it's going to be perfect, right? So the first person comes to me like the summer of 2017, and they say, we want to book you to do this. And I say, great. It was for like a cool event, and it was being sponsored by a Fortune 500 company. So I knew they could afford 5,000. So I was kind of prepared to say yes. They're just going to say yes, but I was hoping they say no. So then I say, okay, great. Here's my rate. And they come back to me on the email and they say, oh no, we don't have a budget like that. We're not going to pay you that. And I was offended. I was like, even though I didn't want them to say yes, I was offended. I was like, wait a second, what? You said no to me? So that was interesting. So then the second time it happened, somebody reached out and I said, my rate is 5,000. I didn't lower it out of pride, but I did want them to say kind of yes this time. I said, it's 5,000. They came back and they said, nope, we're not going to pay that budget for you. So then I was upset. I was just highly offended and upset. And I'm like, wait a minute. Now I need to get a yes. So then the third group came to me, Fortune 500, one of the most well-known companies in the world, had so much money. They came to me and they said, we want you to speak at this event. It's happening in a few weeks and we want you there. And I said, okay, it's 5,000, knowing they would say no and kind of already deflated. And they came back to me and they said, actually, we have earmarked twice as much for that. We earmarked $10,000 plus travel plus a companion. So we hope you'll accept. And I said, well, I sure will accept. And on that day, my rate went up to 10,000 and it never looked back. Right. So those things started to happen. I spoke on that stage. It started happening more. And then I'll tell you what happened is that people started coming up to me after these events and just telling me how much they appreciated my story. And maybe if I said something funny or something enlightening to them, they just told me what they appreciated. Nobody came up to me and said, you know what, you really stumbled on that second question. Or I didn't really understand when you were like paused for too long. Da, da, da. No one cared about the faults. No one cared about the stops. They cared about what they did get out of it. And that has stayed with me until this moment, years later, just a few years later, where I am making so much money from speaking. And even when I don't get paid to speak, I'm able to project my message, which brings in money and revenue and income in other ways. In fact, I had my very first large scale event, Your First Million Live, at the Peacock Theater in Los Angeles, where the Emmys are held. I interviewed Issa Rae, Rich Paul, TLC performed, and there were a dozen other speakers there or more. And 2,000 people from all over the world in this huge theater, and I wasn't nervous at all. So I'm going to tell you exactly how you can do this too. Here are some practical tools and tips for you. The first thing I want to mention to you are beta blockers. Beta blockers are a medicine that you take that slows your heart rate a little bit and calms you down. A huge, huge, huge asterisk. You have to work with your doctor to get this. This is not something that you just procure and use for stage fright. You go to your doctor, you tell them you have stage fright, and you ask them if you, under your circumstances of health, would be a good candidate for this. And then if you get it, they're going to probably tell you, take one of these. It's not it's nothing that's going to be too crazy. They'll say, take one of these at home with supervision and see how it makes you feel. You may not get a yes because your current circumstances may not be the right thing. And what beta blockers are, they're not a magic pill by any means. They do not make you funny, smart, or ready to be on stage. But what they do is they address the physical components of stage fright, where your heart beats really fast and you're sweaty and your makes your voice shake because of all these things that are physically happening to you. And it calms you down so that you feel a little bit calmer. It's like when you go and you have dental surgery and they give you something before you lay in the chair so that you can just kind of relax driving in and kind of calm things down. Not everyone needs to use a beta blocker to get over stage fright. I only used it for a few weeks and it became more of a placebo to me than anything else, right? It was more of this thing of like, I have it, so it makes me feel like I'm doing better, so therefore I'm better. But then at one point, I just took them out of my suitcase and I said, I'm not going to try these. These are training wheels. I'm off of them and I'm off to the races. And it's been great ever since. The next tool I want you to use at your disposal is honesty. Honesty. You're going to be honest with the hosts before you get on stage so that they understand what they're dealing with. It's like when you sit on a flight and you're afraid of flying, you tell the person next to you, I may freak out a little bit. It's all good, right? Tell the person who's about to interview you well ahead of time. And then you're honest a second time with the audience. You don't have to make a big deal about it or spend a lot of time talking about it. But at the very top, I used to say, I just want everyone to know that I have really bad stage fright. And so I may waver in my voice, but it's going to be okay in a few minutes. And usually what would happen almost every single time is this round of applause of, hey, you're here and you're brave and you're doing it and we got you. That's usually what happens. So if you start off like that, it tears down these walls of like what could happen if something goes wrong, which is one of the reasons you have stage fright. Another thing that will help you is to lean into what you're comfortable with. In my case, it's fireside chats and Q&A. So fireside chats where I'm sitting across like on a podcast type situation, but in front of an audience and I'm being interviewed. And the reason that's comfortable to me is because I've interviewed a lot of people and I like talking to people one on one. So I can kind of stare at them, especially those early days of getting over stage fright. I can kind of just look at them like we're the only two people in the world and they can have that conversation. And then little by little, you'll open up a little bit. You'll turn a little bit to the left or to the right and open up a little bit into the audience. And it won't be as frustrating. It's also easier for me personally to prepare for a fireside because I can get the questions ahead of time or not. And it'll usually be about a theme. It'll be about my life story. It'll be about what I think about certain things. And it'll be really something that we can work together to say, like, these are the topics I want to talk about. And therefore, I can do this, right? Now, for other people, what may be comfortable is delivering a keynote, like having slides behind you and you're the one who presses the button and you go to this and you're actually kind of reading off. You're using the notes on the slide to go to the next page. You're not directly reading every word for word, but you're just using it to guide you. For some people, that's going to be easier for them because they can control it. And then a Q&A, I love Q&As because again, I can think on my feet and I know these topics. And I think that if I'm helping someone, it helps me get over my own issues. Another thing to note is that one of the reasons you have stage fright is because you're afraid that you're going to say something stupid or you're afraid you're going to get something wrong and it's just going to echo and echo and you're going to be just caught in this deer in headlights situation. The way to combat that is to get more information. I talk about this in my book, It's About Damn Time, and I have an entire chapter about my stage fright in that book that teaches you even more. So I highly recommend it. So you get more information, which makes you feel more confident, which makes you speak more. And then speaking more makes you feel more confident and gives you more information. And it's this beautiful flywheel that just keeps getting better and better and faster and faster. It just means that the more you speak, the better you get at it. The better you're at it, the more you want to speak, and so on and so forth. Another thing that helped me so much that I think will help you is I turned my fear into energy. So all of this feeling I still had for several speaking engagements for like a year that I still had residual every single time, when I would feel it, instead of letting it kind of quake me and take over me, I would start to imagine it as something that I could physically move through my body. If I was nervous and I was shaking a little bit, or if I was a little bit heart pounding, I would mentally imagine it all as this sort of ambiguous, this mist, and I would put it right here in my chest, or right here at the top of my chest. And I would turn it into kind of a shield. And it was like this thing that was, it was holding me up. And then I would get excited. So instead of being nervous, worried, and fearful, I was excited. I get to go. My friend Mel Robbins says, change I have to into I get to, and it changes everything. So I would say to myself, instead of I have to go out on stage now, I would say I get to go out on stage. I get to go out on stage. I get to, like, people are here to see me speak, and what an honor that is, right? So I would do that, and I think it'll help you too. The last big thing I want you to think about is your voice. And I don't mean your physical voice, I mean your voice, your message, what you want to get out into the world, whether it's promoting your offer or your company or your product, or if it's promoting a message of something, of love, of camaraderie, of whatever that is. You speaking on these stages, get your word out there, get your message out there in an amplified way faster than almost anything else. It's the same thing with being on YouTube, to be honest, because you speaking and you saying, I'm not going to hold myself back. I'm not going to worry about what I look like. I'm not going to worry about what haters say who are in their basement, what they have to say about anything. I'm going to get out there. Then you pierce through the noise and you get to the people. If you're still watching this, you're my people. If you're still watching this, let me know in the comments that you're still here and you're getting something from it, because you're my people. You're saying, actually, yeah, like you found me. And so you can find your people by speaking. You get to collaborate with other people. You get to have opportunities that you may have never dreamed of. And you get to inspire and empower so many other people when you speak, no matter what the topic, education, entertainment, no matter what you're talking about, someone is looking at you as an example and they're being inspired. And what will happen with you if you think through this and make that decision to say yes to 3 different speaking engagements over a certain period of time, no matter what happens, you might just change your life as well.